When my son Michael told me, "You embarrass us," at his mother's funeral, I quietly walked away from the crowd. By the next morning, I had called my lawyer to transfer my $44 million in company shares away from him forever. And that was just the beginning. Justice had to happen. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening in the comments. My name is Thomas Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. I've been the founder and majority owner of Mitchell Manufacturing for over 40 years now. Started with one small machine shop back in 1981 and built it into one of the largest industrial equipment companies in the region. Today, my business is worth about $80 million, and I own 55% of all company shares. My wife Sarah died from cancer 2 weeks ago after 48 years of marriage. She was the love of my life and my business partner in everything we built together. We had 3 children, but only one is still alive. Our daughter Jennifer died in a car accident when she was 26 years old. Our younger son Paul moved to Australia 15 years ago for his career and visits once a year. Our oldest son Michael is 45 years old and has worked at Mitchell Manufacturing for the past 20 years. Michael is my heir and the person I plan to leave the company to when I died. I've spent the last decade training him to take over the business operations and leadership responsibilities. Put him through an MBA program at Northwestern University that cost me $120,000. Gave him a vice president position with a salary of $150,000 per year. Sarah and I always thought Michael would be the one to carry on our family legacy. But something started going wrong with Michael about 5 years ago when he got married to a woman named Ashley, who comes from old money. She began filling his head with ideas about social status and what kind of behavior was acceptable for wealthy families. "Michael, your father needs to learn proper etiquette for business events," she would tell him. "Successful people don't act like regular working folks anymore." Michael started making comments about my appearance and my way of talking that bothered me during family gatherings. "Dad, maybe you should update your wardrobe with some nicer clothes," he would suggest. "You represent Mitchell Manufacturing now, and people judge companies by how their owners present themselves." These suggestions felt like criticisms of the man who had built everything he was enjoying. The real problem started when Sarah got sick with cancer last year, and I began spending more time at the hospital instead of at the office. Michael seemed to think this gave him authority to make decisions about company operations without consulting me. "Dad, you don't need to worry about day-to-day business while Mom is getting treatment," he would say. "I can handle everything at Mitchell Manufacturing until you're ready to focus again." But Michael's idea of handling things meant changing policies and procedures that I had developed over 40 years of successful business operations. "Dad, we need to modernize our approach to customer service," he would tell me. "The old ways of doing business don't work in today's competitive market." His advice ignored my decades of experience and the relationships I had built with clients who trusted Mitchell Manufacturing. What bothered me most was Michael's growing assumption that he would automatically inherit control of the company when I died or retired. He would make long-term plans and commitments without asking for my approval. "Dad, I've scheduled a meeting with potential investors for next month," became typical conversations that ignored the fact that I still owned the majority of company shares and made all major decisions. During Sarah's final weeks in the hospital, Michael started acting like he was already running Mitchell Manufacturing completely. He would tell employees that changes needed to be made to prepare for new leadership transition. These comments made me uncomfortable because I had never officially announced any plans to retire or transfer ownership to him. Sarah died on a Tuesday morning in October while I was holding her hand in the hospital room. The love of my life was gone, and I felt completely lost without my partner of 48 years. Thomas, take care of yourself, and don't let anyone treat you badly, were the last words she said to me. I promised her I would honor her memory and protect the business we had built together. The funeral was scheduled for Friday afternoon at St. Mary's Catholic Church, where Sarah and I had been married decades earlier. I expected it to be a difficult day, but I thought my family would support me through the grief of losing my wife. I had no idea that Michael was planning to use his mother's funeral as an opportunity to humiliate and control his father. Now let me tell you exactly how I built my fortune while Michael learned to take everything for granted. This story starts 43 years ago, when I was just 29 years old, with nothing but a used lathe and a dream about manufacturing industrial equipment. Most people thought starting a machine shop was too risky and competitive for a young man with no connections. But I could see that our growing industrial region would need someone willing to work harder than everyone else. I started Mitchell Manufacturing with an $8,000 loan from the bank and pure determination to succeed. Sarah supported me completely, even though we were living paycheck to paycheck in those early years. Thomas, if you believe in this business, then I believe in you, she told me. We lived in a tiny rental house and saved every penny to buy better equipment and tools. The breakthrough came when I won a contract to manufacture custom conveyor parts for a local factory in 1984. The project was bigger than anything I had attempted before, but I knew it could establish my reputation in the regional market. Sarah kept the books while I worked 16-hour days machining parts and managing every aspect of production and delivery. That conveyor contract launched my career and led to bigger projects over the following years. Within a decade, Mitchell Manufacturing was supplying equipment to factories, warehouses, and distribution centers across 3 states. I reinvested every dollar of profit back into the company to buy land, machinery, and hire the best workers available in our area. By the time Michael was born in 1978, we were making real money and building a solid foundation for our family's future. But Sarah and I never forgot our humble beginnings or the sacrifices required to build something from nothing. Thomas, let's make sure our children understand the value of hard work, Sarah would say. Money should be earned through effort, not just inherited without appreciation. Michael grew up watching his parents work long hours to build our family business. He had chores around the house, earned his allowance through good behavior, and worked summer jobs at the manufacturing facility during high school. Michael, success requires treating people fairly and making good decisions, I taught him. Everything we have today came from working harder than our competitors and never giving up. Michael seemed to appreciate these lessons about character and business ethics. When Michael went to college, I paid for his education completely so he could focus on his studies without financial stress. Northwestern University Business Program for 4 years, $120,000 in total costs. Michael graduated with decent grades and wanted to join Mitchell Manufacturing immediately. Sarah and I were proud of the responsible young man he had become. After Michael started working at the company, I continued supporting him financially when he needed assistance. Down payment for his first house, $60,000. Car purchase when his college vehicle broke down, $35,000. Wedding expenses that got completely out of control, $48,000. I was happy to help my son build a stable life while learning the family business. But Michael always showed genuine gratitude for my help during those early years at the company. Dad, thank you for giving me this opportunity to learn from someone with your experience, he would say sincerely. I know how hard you worked to build Mitchell Manufacturing, and I want to earn my place here through good performance." Michael understood that my generosity came from love and decades of sacrifice, not from some endless money supply. When Michael got married to Ashley 5 years ago, I was excited about having a daughter-in-law and potentially grandchildren who could carry on our family legacy. "Sarah, this means Mitchell Manufacturing might continue for another generation," I told my wife. We both looked forward to watching our family business grow with the next generation's energy and ideas. But something started changing in Michael's attitude after he married Ashley and got comfortable with his vice president's salary and benefits. The grateful son slowly became someone who expected financial support and business opportunities without showing much appreciation for the person providing them. "Dad, I need a company car for client meetings," became typical requests without acknowledgement of previous help or current salary. I started noticing that Michael's thank you messages became shorter and less frequent over time. Instead of detailed appreciation for my guidance and support, he would give quick responses like, "Sounds good," or just "okay." The personal connection and genuine gratitude were disappearing as he became more comfortable with his privileged position at Mitchell Manufacturing. What bothered me most was Michael's growing assumption that he would automatically inherit control of the company without having to earn it through exceptional performance or leadership skills. He would make statements like, "When I'm running Mitchell Manufacturing," instead of asking about my retirement plans or succession timeline. The entitlement was replacing the work ethic I had tried to teach him. Ashley seemed to encourage Michael's entitled attitude by constantly comparing our family's wealth to her parents' old money background. "Michael, your father should be more strategic about social networking with other business owners," she would tell him. Successful families maintain certain standards about public appearances and community involvement. Her influence was making Michael more concerned about status than about business fundamentals. The company's success continued growing despite Michael's changing attitude, but I started worrying about whether he had the character and values necessary to lead Mitchell Manufacturing responsibly. Annual revenue had reached $42 million last year. Employee count had grown to 138 people. But success requires more than just numbers. It requires respect for the people and principles that built the foundation. During Sarah's final illness, Michael was about to show me exactly what he thought about the father who had given him everything. Let me take you back to that terrible Friday afternoon when Michael said the words that started my perfect business revenge. It was October 27th, the day of Sarah's funeral at St. Mary's Catholic Church. I was wearing my best black suit, the one Sarah had bought me for our 40th wedding anniversary 3 years earlier. The church was packed with over 200 people who had come to pay their respects to my beloved wife. I had spent the morning greeting family and friends who wanted to share memories of Sarah and offer their condolences. "Thomas, Sarah was such a wonderful woman," people kept telling me. "She'll be missed by everyone who knew her." Their kind words helped me get through the most difficult day of my life since losing my wife of 48 years. Michael arrived at the church 30 minutes before the service with Ashley and their 2 young children. He was wearing an expensive suit I had never seen before, probably something Ashley had picked out for the occasion. "Dad, how are you holding up?" he asked when he saw me greeting people near the front of the church. His question seemed genuine, and I thought maybe this tragedy would bring our family closer together. "I'm managing, son," I replied, grateful to have family support during my grief. "Your mother would be happy to see how many people came to honor her memory." I was hoping that Sarah's funeral would remind Michael about what really mattered in life: family relationships and treating people with love and respect. The funeral service was beautiful, exactly the kind of ceremony Sarah would have wanted. Father Martinez spoke about her kindness and devotion to family and community. Several friends shared stories about Sarah's volunteer work at the food bank and her help with church fundraising events. I felt proud of the woman I had been married to and the positive impact she had made on so many people's lives. But after the service ended, things started going wrong when people gathered outside the church for the burial procession. I was talking to some of my business clients who had come to pay their respects when I noticed Michael and Ashley having an intense conversation near their car. They kept looking in my direction, like they were discussing something about me that was making them uncomfortable. Tom Rodriguez, who owns the welding supply company that's been my vendor for 20 years, came over to offer his condolences. "Thomas, Sarah was always so nice to my wife whenever we saw you folks at business events," he said warmly. "She made everyone feel welcome and comfortable." Tom was wearing work clothes because he had come straight from his shop to attend Sarah's funeral. "Thank you, Tom," I replied, appreciating his effort to be there for me during this difficult time. Sarah always said that good business relationships are built on treating people like family. We talked for a few more minutes about Sarah's kindness and how much she would be missed by everyone in our business community. That's when Michael walked over with Ashley beside him, both looking annoyed about something that had clearly upset them. "Dad, we need to talk," Michael said in a tone that made me nervous about what was coming next. "There's something Ashley and I need to discuss with you about today's arrangements." I could tell from his formal language that this wasn't going to be a supportive family conversation. "What's wrong, son?" I asked, genuinely confused about why they seemed angry on the day we were burying Sarah. "Is there a problem with the burial service or the reception afterward?" I thought maybe there was some logistical issue they needed help resolving before we proceeded to the cemetery. Ashley spoke first, her voice cold and filled with disapproval about something I had done. "Thomas, we're concerned about how you're representing the family today," she said. "Some of your interactions with people have been inappropriate for this kind of formal occasion." Her criticism felt like an attack during the worst day of my life. "What do you mean?" I asked, still confused about what I could have possibly done wrong while greeting people who had come to honor my wife's memory. "I've been thanking everyone for coming and sharing memories of Sarah." I couldn't understand what aspect of my behavior could be considered inappropriate or embarrassing. Michael then delivered the words that changed everything between us forever. "Dad, you embarrass us when you act like a regular working man instead of a successful business owner," he said coldly. "Ashley's family and our business contacts expect a certain level of sophistication that you're not demonstrating today." The words hit me like a physical blow from someone I had raised and supported for 45 years. "Michael, I'm greeting people who loved your mother," I said, trying to understand how being kind and grateful could be embarrassing to anyone. "These are friends and neighbors who took time from their lives to honor Sarah's memory." "Dad, you were talking to that welding guy like he's your equal," Ashley added with disgust in her voice. "People like Tom Rodriguez are vendors, not social peers. You need to maintain appropriate boundaries about who you associate with at family events." Her words revealed exactly what she thought about the working people who had helped build Mitchell Manufacturing. Michael supported his wife's cruel assessment of my behavior and the people I had been talking to. "Dad, we can't have you damaging our family's reputation by acting like some blue-collar worker instead of a multimillionaire business executive," he said. "Today should be about dignity and class, not chatting with suppliers and laborers like they're family friends." I stood there in shock, as my own son told me that being respectful to good people was somehow embarrassing to him and his wife. The funeral of the woman who had taught us both about kindness and treating everyone with respect was being turned into a lesson about social status and class distinctions. "You embarrass us," kept echoing in my mind as I realized that my son had become someone I no longer recognized or respected. After Michael's cruel words at Sarah's funeral, I drove home alone to the empty house where my wife and I had lived for 32 years. The funeral reception was still going on at the church, but I couldn't face pretending everything was normal after my son had called me an embarrassment in front of everyone who came to honor Sarah's memory. Sitting in my living room that evening, I pulled out the business documents that showed exactly what my ungrateful son had thrown away with his disrespectful words. The first document was my stock ownership certificate for Mitchell Manufacturing, showing that I owned 55% of all company shares. Current estimated value based on last year's financial audit, $44.2 million. Just sitting there in my filing cabinet, while Michael thought he could treat his father like some embarrassing burden who needed to learn proper social behavior from his wealthy daughter-in-law. I found my personal financial summary that my accountant had prepared for estate planning purposes 6 months ago. Total net worth, including business holdings, real estate, and investments, $67.8 million. Enough money to buy and sell Ashley's entire family fortune several times over. Yet somehow I was the one who needed lessons about how successful people should behave at social events. The most painful document was the succession plan I had drafted with my lawyer just 3 months before Sarah died. Upon Thomas Mitchell's death or retirement, Michael Mitchell will inherit controlling interest in Mitchell Manufacturing and assume the role of Chief Executive Officer. $44 million in company shares that would have made Michael one of the wealthiest men in our region if he had shown basic respect for his father. But looking at these financial documents also reminded me of all the money and opportunities I had given Michael over the years without him showing genuine appreciation. Northwestern University MBA program, $120,000. Vice president salary for 20 years, over $2.5 million total. House down payment, cars, wedding, and various loans, another $200,000. Almost $3 million invested in someone who thought I was an embarrassment. The company financial reports showed how Mitchell Manufacturing had grown under my leadership, while Michael learned to take credit for success he hadn't earned. Annual revenue last year, $42.6 million. Net profit, $8.3 million. Employee count, 138 people with good-paying jobs. All of this built by someone Michael considered too unsophisticated to associate with working-class people at his mother's funeral. I also found the original business incorporation papers from 1981 that reminded me exactly how Mitchell Manufacturing had started. Thomas Mitchell, sole proprietor, was the designation when I began with one used lathe in a rented garage. Every machine, every contract, every employee had been added through my decisions and Sarah's support, while Michael was still playing with toys and learning to walk. The employee roster was particularly meaningful as I thought about Michael's cruel comments about Tom Rodriguez and other working people. 43% of our workers had been with Mitchell Manufacturing for over 10 years. 67% lived in the same community where Sarah and I had raised our family. These weren't just vendors and laborers, as Ashley had called them. They were neighbors, friends, and the foundation of everything we had built. Looking at my will and estate planning documents made Michael's funeral behavior even more insulting than I had realized during our conversation. Michael Mitchell shall inherit the family business and all associated assets upon his father's death. The son who called me an embarrassment was scheduled to receive everything I had worked 43 years to create. simply because he happened to be born into the right family. My phone had been ringing all evening with calls from people who attended the funeral and wanted to check on my well-being. Tom Rodriguez left a voicemail saying, "Thomas, I hope you're doing okay after today. Sarah would be proud of how you handled yourself with such grace during a difficult time." The man Michael considered beneath our social status was showing more character than my own son. 3 other business associates called to offer their support and share memories of Sarah's kindness over the years. "Your wife always treated everyone with respect regardless of their job or background," one of them told me. She would be disappointed to see family members acting like they're better than the people who helped build their success. Their words made me realize that Sarah would be heartbroken by Michael's behavior and attitude. The most painful part of reviewing these documents was understanding that Michael had never actually earned his position at Mitchell Manufacturing through merit or exceptional performance. His vice president title, his salary, his office, and his presumed inheritance were all gifts from a father he now considered embarrassing and socially inappropriate for wealthy families. The business valuation reports showed that Mitchell Manufacturing's success came from treating employees, customers, and vendors with fairness and respect, exactly the behavior Michael had criticized at Sarah's funeral. Company strength based on long-term relationships and reputation for integrity, the consultant had written. Leadership transition should maintain these core values. But Michael's values were clearly focused on social status rather than business principles. Sitting there in my empty house that night, I made a decision that would change Michael's comfortable assumptions about his inheritance and his future. If he thought his father was an embarrassment who associated with the wrong kinds of people, then maybe he didn't deserve to inherit a company built on treating everyone with dignity and respect. The son who was embarrassed by his father was about to discover exactly what that embarrassment was worth financially. The morning, after Sarah's funeral, I woke up in my empty house with a clear plan about what I needed to do to Michael. He thought he could call me an embarrassment while having no idea about the $44 million in company shares that controlled his entire comfortable future. Michael had treated me like some socially awkward burden who needed lessons about proper behavior from wealthy families. It was time to show my son exactly who really owned the family business he took for granted. I spent the morning organizing my strategy for maximum impact on Michael's understanding of business ownership and respect. This wasn't going to be some emotional outburst or angry confrontation that he could dismiss as his grieving father's overreaction. This was going to be a calculated business demonstration that would permanently change his assumptions about inheritance and his position at Mitchell Manufacturing. I decided to wait until Michael felt completely secure in his vice president role before revealing his complete dependence on my goodwill. Monday morning would be perfect timing because he would return to work assuming that everything was normal after the funeral weekend. When Michael discovered that embarrassing his father had serious business consequences, the timing would create maximum impact on his comfortable lifestyle. But I also wanted to make sure the entire business community understood exactly why Michael's inheritance had been eliminated. This wasn't about being petty or vindictive toward a son making mistakes. This was about teaching important lessons about respect and family values that successful businesses require from their leadership. Character mattered more than bloodlines when it came to running Mitchell Manufacturing. My plan was to call an emergency board of directors meeting for Tuesday morning to discuss immediate changes in company succession planning. I need to revise my estate plans and leadership transition based on recent family developments, I would tell them. The 5 board members all knew Michael personally and would understand why his funeral behavior disqualified him from inheriting control of a company built on treating people with dignity. I also plan to contact my lawyer Robert Chen first thing Monday morning to begin the legal process of removing Michael from my will completely. Robert, I need to eliminate my son's inheritance and redirect my estate to charitable organizations, I would explain. Michael has demonstrated that his values are incompatible with the principles that built Mitchell Manufacturing. Robert would understand the seriousness of this decision. The timing of these actions would be perfect because Michael would be settling back into his normal routine while assuming he was still the heir to a $44 million business empire. His comfortable assumptions about automatic inheritance would be shattered when he learned that embarrassing his father had permanent financial consequences that couldn't be apologized away. I calculated the complete disruption this would cause to Michael's lifestyle and future planning. His vice president's salary of $150,000 per year was good money, but nothing compared to owning 55% of a company worth $80 million. Without the inheritance, Michael would be just another employee instead of the future owner of Mitchell Manufacturing. But more importantly, Michael's wife Ashley would discover that her social status ambitions were built on money that no longer existed for their family. Michael, you embarrassed your father at the funeral, and now he's disinherited you, she would ask in shock. How could you throw away $44 million over social etiquette? The marriage pressure would be intense when Ashley realized her comfortable future had disappeared. I also wanted to document everything that had happened at Sarah's funeral for potential legal challenges to my decision. If Michael tried to claim that I was mentally incompetent or that his behavior hadn't been serious enough to justify disinheritance, I needed witnesses who could testify about his public disrespect. His "you embarrass us" comment had been heard by Tom Rodriguez and several other people at the church. The most satisfying part of my plan was knowing that Michael's desire to distance himself from working-class people would be granted in exactly the way he didn't want. He had been embarrassed by his father's friendships with vendors and employees. Now he would learn that those relationships were more valuable than his entitled assumptions about inheriting wealth he had never earned. I spent the afternoon reviewing all my legal documents to make sure Michael couldn't successfully challenge my right to disinherit him based on his disrespectful behavior. The succession plan was my personal decision as majority owner, not some legal obligation that protected Michael's inheritance regardless of his actions. I could leave my shares to anyone I wanted, and Ashley's social ambitions weren't legally protected interests. I also prepared talking points for when I inevitably had to explain my decision to family members and business associates. Michael made it very clear at his mother's funeral that he was embarrassed by his father's values and character. I would say calmly, I'm simply ensuring that Mitchell Manufacturing continues under leadership that shares the principles Sarah and I used to build this company. The logic would be unassailable and completely based on Michael's own words and behavior. That evening, I called my brother Frank, who lived in Chicago, to discuss my plans for Michael's disinheritance. Frank, Michael told me at Sarah's funeral that I embarrass him because I treat working people with respect, I explained. How can I leave $44 million to someone who thinks treating employees and vendors with dignity is socially inappropriate? Frank agreed that Michael's attitude was incompatible with responsible business ownership. Over the weekend, I watched Michael enjoy his normal routine while having no idea that his funeral behavior had already cost him the family fortune. The son who was embarrassed by his father was about to discover exactly what that embarrassment was worth. 2 days after I called the emergency board meeting to discuss Michael's disinheritance, my phone started ringing frantically on Tuesday morning. It was Michael calling me at home in complete panic about something his secretary had told him. Dad, Linda said the board of directors is meeting this morning about succession planning changes, he said urgently. She thinks you've called some kind of emergency meeting without telling me about it. Michael, that sounds like normal business operations, I replied calmly, like I had no idea what could be causing his concern. Board meetings happen regularly to discuss company planning and strategy decisions. I wanted to hear exactly how Michael had discovered my actions before confirming his worst fears about losing his inheritance. Dad, Linda said the meeting agenda includes reviewing my position as heir to Mitchell Manufacturing. Michael continued with worry in his voice. She thinks you're making changes to the succession plan because you're upset about something that happened at Mom's funeral. He was trying to understand what had triggered this business crisis just 4 days after Sarah's burial. I stayed completely calm while listening to Michael's growing panic about his future at the company. Michael, maybe the board just wants to review our long-term planning to make sure everything is structured properly, I said matter-of-factly. Sometimes leadership transitions need to be evaluated based on changing family circumstances and company needs. I was enjoying his slow realization that funeral behavior might have business consequences. Dad, are you behind this board meeting? Michael asked directly, his voice getting more nervous. Because the timing seems really suspicious just days after we buried Mom. He was starting to connect his disrespectful comments at the funeral with the business meeting that was now threatening his comfortable assumptions about inheritance. Michael, what are you suggesting? I asked innocently. Are you implying that your behavior at your mother's funeral might have influenced business decisions about company leadership? I wanted him to directly acknowledge his cruel words before revealing the full scope of his consequences. That's when Michael began realizing there might be serious repercussions for embarrassing his father in public that he had never considered. Dad, please tell me you didn't call this board meeting because of our conversation at the church, he said desperately. We can work out any family disagreements without involving the business and my career at Mitchell Manufacturing. The panic in his voice told me he was starting to understand that disrespecting family members could affect his professional future. Michael, what family disagreements are you worried about? I asked directly. I thought you said I was embarrassing to you and Ashley because of how I treated working people. I wanted him to repeat his cruel words and understand exactly what he had said to his grieving father. Within an hour of our phone conversation, Michael showed up at my house unannounced, looking completely panicked and defeated. He had left work in the middle of the morning to confront me about the board meeting that was threatening his entire future. Dad, we need to talk about whatever you've done regarding my position at the company, he said urgently as he stood on my front porch. Come in, son, I said calmly, enjoying his obvious distress about facing consequences for his actions. What seems to be the problem with your position at Mitchell Manufacturing? I wanted to hear him explain his panic before revealing the full scope of what his funeral behavior had cost him. Michael sat down in my living room and started listing his fears about the emergency board meeting. Dad, if you're changing the succession plan because you're angry about the funeral, you're going to destroy my career and my family's financial security, he said frantically. I've worked at Mitchell Manufacturing for 20 years, and my entire future depends on eventually inheriting your shares. His confession revealed how completely his comfortable lifestyle depended on my goodwill. Michael, why would your career be in danger? I asked patiently. I thought you were a capable vice president who earned his position through merit and performance. I wanted him to acknowledge that his job and inheritance were gifts from the father he had called embarrassing, not achievements he had earned independently. Dad, Everyone knows I'm your son and your heir, Michael replied desperately. If you remove me from the succession plan, people will assume I did something terrible to lose your trust and respect. He was realizing that his reputation in the business community was built on being Thomas Mitchell's son, not on his own accomplishments or character. I decided it was time to give him a hint about the consequences his funeral behavior had created. Michael, when you told me I embarrassed you at your mother's funeral, what did you think would happen to our relationship? I asked calmly. Did you expect me to continue planning to leave you $44 million in company shares after you publicly disrespected the way I treat working people? Dad, what are you saying? Michael asked with growing dread in his voice. He was starting to realize that his cruel words might have permanently damaged his inheritance prospects. Are you actually planning to disinherit me because of one conversation we had during a stressful day? His question revealed that he still didn't understand the seriousness of embarrassing his father at his wife's funeral. Michael, it wasn't just one conversation, I explained firmly. It was you telling your father that treating people with respect was socially inappropriate and embarrassing to your family. The education about consequences was beginning, and Michael was starting to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The son who had been embarrassed by his father was learning that embarrassment works both ways in family relationships. After Michael's panicked visit about the board meeting, I realized I needed solid evidence to support my decision to disinherit him. If Michael was going to challenge my right to change the succession plan, or claim that his funeral behavior wasn't serious enough to justify removing his inheritance, I wanted bulletproof documentation of 25 years of entitlement and gradual loss of respect for his father. I spent the next day gathering decades of records that told the complete story of Michael's unearned benefits and ungrateful attitude. I started by organizing every payroll record and financial document related to Michael's employment at Mitchell Manufacturing since he joined the company in 2003. His starting salary as a junior associate, $45,000 per year. His current salary as vice president, $150,000 per year. Total compensation over 20 years. Over $2.2 million for someone who had never worked anywhere else or proven himself in competitive job markets. The promotion timeline showed how Michael had advanced through company ranks based on family connections rather than exceptional performance. Associate to supervisor in 18 months. Supervisor to manager in 2 years. Manager to assistant vice president in 3 years. Vice president at age 35. Each promotion came with substantial salary increases that weren't based on measurable achievements or competitive qualifications compared to other employees. I found performance reviews that revealed Michael's adequate but unremarkable work history at Mitchell Manufacturing. Meets expectations was the most common rating across multiple categories over many years. Needs improvement in leadership initiative appeared in several reviews. Sometimes struggles with employee relations was noted by 3 different supervisors. These weren't the reviews of someone who had earned vice president status through merit. The expense account records were particularly revealing about Michael's attitude toward company money and resources. Business lunches at expensive restaurants, averaging $800 per month. Conference travel to resort locations, $12,000 annually. Company car lease payments, $18,000 per year. Michael treated Mitchell Manufacturing like his personal expense account, while contributing mediocre performance. But the most important evidence was the detailed financial records showing exactly how much money I had given Michael personally over the years beyond his generous salary. College tuition and living expenses, $120,000. House down payment, $60,000. Car purchases, $35,000. Wedding costs, $48,000. Various loans that were never repaid, $26,000. The total personal financial support exceeded $289,000. I also documented Michael's pattern of dismissive comments about company employees and business relationships that showed his growing arrogance over the years. "Dad, why do you spend so much time talking to the floor workers?" he had asked me 6 months ago. Management should maintain professional distance from regular employees. His attitude ignored the fact that those floor workers were the foundation of Mitchell Manufacturing's success. The customer relationship files showed how Michael's entitled approach had actually damaged some of our long-term business partnerships. 2 major clients had specifically requested to work with me instead of Michael after meeting with him. "Your son seems to think he's better than our operation," one customer had told me. "We prefer doing business with people who respect what we do." Michael's arrogance was costing us money and relationships. I found email exchanges where Michael had questioned my business decisions and suggested that I was too old-fashioned for modern markets. "Dad, maybe we should consider hiring a professional consultant to modernize our operations," he had written last year. Sometimes family businesses get stuck in outdated methods that limit growth potential. His suggestion that I didn't understand the business I had built was both arrogant and ignorant. These emails showed Michael's growing assumption that he should have more authority over company decisions, despite being an employee rather than an owner. "Dad, I think we need to update our employee benefits package to attract younger talent," became typical messages that ignored the fact that Mitchell Manufacturing had extremely low turnover rates and satisfied workers. Michael wanted to fix problems that didn't exist. The most damaging evidence was Michael's pattern of name-dropping his inheritance prospects during business meetings and social events. "When I inherit Mitchell Manufacturing, we'll be expanding into new markets," he had told a supplier last month. "My father built a great foundation, but the next generation will take things to the next level." His public assumptions about automatic inheritance showed complete disrespect for my authority as owner. I documented specific instances where Michael had undermined my authority with employees by suggesting that changes would come when he took over the company. During a staff meeting 3 months ago, he had said, "Dad's methods work fine for now, but we'll probably need to modernize our approach as business conditions change." These comments damaged employee confidence in current leadership while boosting his own image. The board meeting minutes showed Michael's history of questioning my decisions and pushing for policies that would benefit him personally. Michael Mitchell suggested that vice presidents should receive equity compensation, appeared in meeting notes from last year. Motion failed due to lack of support from other board members. He was trying to get company shares without earning them or waiting for inheritance. Most importantly, I found evidence of Michael's complete lack of genuine appreciation for the opportunities and support I had provided throughout his entire adult life. Thank you cards were rare, and usually written by Ashley rather than Michael himself. Personal conversations about gratitude were almost non-existent. "Dad provides good opportunities" was about the strongest appreciation he had ever expressed for 45 years of love and support. The Ashley influence was clearly documented through changes in Michael's behavior and attitudes after their marriage 5 years ago. Before Ashley, Michael had been respectful and hard-working despite his mediocre performance. After Ashley, he became entitled and critical of the family business that supported their comfortable lifestyle. Her old money background had taught Michael to look down on working people and self-made success. Tomorrow, I would use all this evidence to show the board exactly why Michael's inheritance needed to be eliminated. 4 days after Michael's panicked visit to my house, the board of directors meeting that would change everything took place in the conference room at Mitchell Manufacturing. All 5 board members were present at 9 o'clock sharp on Tuesday morning to hear about the succession plan changes I had requested. I had prepared all my evidence about Michael's disrespectful behavior and unearned benefits, along with the legal documents that would officially remove him from my inheritance plans forever. Thank you all for coming on short notice, I began, as the 5 board members sat around the large oak table where we had made important company decisions for over 20 years. Today we need to discuss immediate changes to Mitchell Manufacturing's leadership succession planning based on recent family developments that affect the company's future direction. The board members looked curious about what could have happened since our last quarterly meeting 6 weeks earlier. Michael was not invited to this meeting, even though he normally attended board sessions in his capacity as vice president. "Thomas, where's Michael this morning?" asked board member Patricia Walsh, who had served on our board for 12 years. "Usually, he's here to take notes and provide operational updates." Her question gave me the perfect opening to explain why Michael's role at the company was being fundamentally changed. "Patricia, Michael's absence is directly related to why I called this emergency meeting," I replied, pulling out the folder of evidence I had prepared. "I need to inform the board that I am immediately removing Michael from all succession planning and eliminating his inheritance of company shares." The room became completely silent as the board members processed this shocking announcement about family changes. Board member James Peterson was the first to speak after my inheritance announcement. "Thomas, this is a very serious decision," he said with concern. "Can you help us understand what happened to cause such a drastic change in your estate planning?" James had known Michael since he was a teenager and was clearly surprised by this dramatic development. "James, let me share with you exactly what Michael said to me at Sarah's funeral last Friday," I replied, opening my evidence folder. "My son told me that I embarrassed him and Ashley because I was treating working people like Tom Rodriguez as equals instead of maintaining appropriate social boundaries." The board members exchanged shocked looks as they understood the disrespectful nature of Michael's funeral behavior. I then read aloud Michael's exact words from my notes about the funeral conversation. "Dad, you embarrass us when you act like a regular working man instead of a successful business owner," I quoted directly. "Ashley's family and our business contacts expect a certain level of sophistication that you're not demonstrating today." The board could see that Michael had insulted his grieving father's character and values at his wife's funeral. Board member Susan Chen, who had known Sarah personally for 15 years, was visibly angry about Michael's funeral behavior. "Thomas, I can't believe Michael said those things to you on the day you buried Sarah," she said with disgust. "That shows a complete lack of respect for both his parents and the values that built this company." Susan understood that Mitchell Manufacturing's success was built on treating all people with dignity and fairness. "Exactly, Susan," I replied, pulling out the financial documents that showed Michael's complete dependence on unearned benefits. "Someone who is embarrassed by treating employees and vendors with respect doesn't deserve to inherit a company that was built on those exact principles." The board could see the direct connection between Michael's values and his unsuitability for company leadership. I then presented the evidence of Michael's mediocre performance and entitled attitude over 20 years at Mitchell Manufacturing. Michael has received over $2.2 million in salary for work that consistently rated as meets expectations rather than exceptional. I explained to the board. His promotions were based on family connections rather than competitive merit or outstanding achievements. The expense account records were particularly damaging to Michael's reputation with the board members. $800 per month for business lunches, $12,000 annually for conference travel, $18,000 per year for company car payments, I listed systematically. Michael has treated company resources like his personal expense account while contributing average performance at best. Board member Robert Martinez asked the question that everyone was thinking about Michael's future without the inheritance. Thomas, are you completely removing Michael from your will, or is there some way he can earn back his inheritance? He said directly. Because losing $44 million in company shares is a life-changing consequence for funeral behavior. The board was wondering if redemption was possible after such serious disrespect. Robert, the disinheritance is permanent and final, I announced clearly. Someone who calls his father an embarrassment for treating people with respect will never control Mitchell Manufacturing. My decision was absolute, and the board could see that Michael's cruel words had permanently damaged our relationship and his inheritance prospects. The board members unanimously supported my decision after reviewing all the evidence of Michael's disrespectful behavior and poor performance. Thomas, you're making the right choice for the company's future, Patricia said firmly. Mitchell Manufacturing needs leadership that shares the values Sarah and you used to build this business. The vote was 5-0 in favor of supporting my succession plan changes. That's when Michael burst through the conference room doors, having discovered the meeting from his secretary, and rushed over from his office. Dad, what's going on here? He demanded frantically. Linda told me the board is meeting about my inheritance, and I have a right to be present for discussions about my future. His panic was obvious as he faced the 5 board members who had just voted to support his disinheritance. Michael, sit down, I said calmly, as he stood there in shock looking at the evidence folder and legal documents spread across the conference table. The board has just voted unanimously to support my decision to remove you from all succession planning at Mitchell Manufacturing. His face went completely white as he realized his comfortable future had just disappeared forever. The son who had called me an embarrassment was learning exactly what that embarrassment was worth. After the board meeting that officially removed Michael from my succession plans, he sat there in complete shock, staring at the legal documents that proved his $44 million inheritance was gone forever. The 5 board members filed out quietly, leaving Michael and me alone in the conference room, where he had just learned the permanent consequences of calling his father an embarrassment. His comfortable assumptions about automatic inheritance had been shattered in front of the business leaders who would spread this news throughout our entire industry. Dad, please tell me this is some kind of mistake, Michael said desperately, his voice shaking as he realized the magnitude of what he had lost. You can't seriously be disinheriting me because of one conversation we had at Mom's funeral. His panic was obvious as he faced the reality that his cruel words had cost him everything he had expected to inherit. Michael, it wasn't just one conversation, I replied calmly, staying in complete control of the situation. It was you telling your grieving father that treating working people with respect was embarrassing and socially inappropriate for wealthy families. I wanted him to understand that his funeral behavior had revealed his true character and values, not just a momentary lapse in judgment. Michael tried to minimize his disrespectful comments and convince me that he deserved another chance. Dad, I was stressed about Mom's death and Ashley's family being there, he said frantically. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings or show disrespect for the people who helped build Mitchell Manufacturing. But his explanation ignored the fact that stress doesn't create character flaws. It reveals them. Michael, you told me I embarrassed you because I treated Tom Rodriguez like an equal. I reminded him. Tom has been our welding supplier for 20 years and came straight from his shop to honor your mother's memory. I wanted Michael to confront the specific cruelty of criticizing his father for showing gratitude to loyal business partners and friends. Ashley arrived at the office 30 minutes later, having heard about the board meeting from Michael's panicked phone call. Thomas, surely we can work out this misunderstanding about the inheritance, she said desperately as she entered the conference room. Michael realizes he made mistakes, and we're both willing to do whatever it takes to repair our family relationship. Her panic was clear as she faced losing the social status and wealth she had expected to inherit. Ashley, this isn't a misunderstanding, I replied firmly. This is the natural consequence of your husband calling his father an embarrassment for treating people with dignity and respect. I wanted her to understand that her influence on Michael's values had contributed to this crisis and the permanent loss of his inheritance. Michael broke down completely as he faced the practical implications of losing his $44 million inheritance. Dad, my entire future was built on eventually inheriting Mitchell Manufacturing, he sobbed. How can I provide for my family or maintain any respect in the business community after losing everything because of my stupid comments? His confession revealed how completely his comfortable lifestyle had depended on money he had never earned. Michael, maybe you should have thought about that before telling your father he was socially inappropriate, I said without sympathy. You made it very clear that my values and character were embarrassing to you and Ashley. The education about consequences was continuing, and Michael was finally understanding that disrespecting family members has permanent costs. Ashley tried a different approach by offering to make amends for their behavior and promising that Michael would change his attitude. Thomas, we'll attend family counseling and make public apologies for our disrespectful treatment, she said frantically. Michael will volunteer with working-class organizations to learn appreciation for the people who built your success. But her promises felt empty after years of encouraging Michael's entitled attitude and social climbing. Ashley, your apologies are motivated by losing money, not by genuine remorse for hurting someone who loved and supported Michael his entire life, I pointed out. How can I trust that your respect is real rather than financially motivated? The timing of their crisis made their sudden change in attitude obviously artificial and self-serving. After listening to Michael and Ashley beg for forgiveness and financial restoration for over an hour, I was ready to announce my final decision about our family relationship and business legacy. Michael, here are my conditions if you want any relationship with me going forward, I said clearly. First, you will publicly apologize to our employees and business partners for your disrespectful attitude toward working people. Second, you will attend counseling to address the entitled attitudes that led to this crisis, I continued. Third, you will treat me with genuine respect and appreciation, not because you want money, but because I'm your father who gave you everything you have. Michael was nodding desperately, willing to agree to anything that might restore some hope of inheritance. Most importantly, you will demonstrate through your actions that you share the values Sarah and I used to build Mitchell Manufacturing, I concluded. I will not tolerate being called embarrassing for treating people with dignity and fairness. Both of them agreed immediately to all my conditions because they had no choice if they wanted any relationship with me. However, I had one more announcement that shocked Michael and Ashley completely. Michael, The inheritance is permanently gone regardless of whether you meet these conditions, I said calmly. You will never receive a single share of Mitchell Manufacturing stock or any portion of my estate. His face went completely white as he realized his comfortable financial future was gone forever. Michael, you said I embarrassed you, so now you're removed from my financial planning permanently, I explained. $44 million will go to charitable organizations that support working families instead of someone who thinks treating employees with respect is socially inappropriate. The perfect justice in my decision was clear to everyone in the room. The son who was embarrassed by his father had learned the permanent cost of disrespecting the person who had made his entire life possible. 8 months have passed since I permanently disinherited Michael, and I'm here today to tell you exactly how my life changed after setting clear boundaries with a family member who had taken my generosity for granted. The shock Michael faced when he lost his $44 million inheritance taught him lessons about respect and consequences that his comfortable assumptions had never required him to learn. Michael followed through on every condition I had set for maintaining any personal relationship, though he would never see a penny of my fortune. He sent written apologies to all Mitchell Manufacturing employees, explaining his disrespectful attitude and what he had learned about appreciating working people. I was wrong to think my father was embarrassing for treating employees with respect, he wrote to everyone. Thomas Mitchell deserves recognition for the values and character that built our company's success. His public acknowledgement of wrongdoing was exactly what I had required for any chance of rebuilding our relationship. He also completed 6 months of counseling about entitlement issues and family respect that had destroyed his character over the years. The therapist helped me understand that I was judging people by their job titles instead of their character, Michael told me during a supervised family dinner 5 months later. I learned that success doesn't give anyone the right to look down on working families or treat them as socially inferior. The professional guidance had clearly improved his understanding of basic human dignity, but the most important change was in Michael's attitude toward me and our family relationship. No more suggestions about proper social behavior or criticisms of my friendships with employees and vendors. No more assumptions about his inherited right to judge the man who had built everything he enjoyed. Dad, I'm grateful that you're still willing to have any relationship with me after what I said at Mom's funeral, he said genuinely during a visit to my house 6 months later. Ashley's adjustment to reality was much more difficult than Michael's because her entire social identity had been built on expectations of inheriting wealth and status. She had to completely restructure her lifestyle and social circle when other families discovered that Michael had been disinherited for disrespecting his father. Ashley thought she was marrying into old money, but now she's just married to a middle management employee, one of her former friends told me. The social consequences were severe but appropriate. Michael's position at Mitchell Manufacturing became purely based on his job performance rather than his family connections. I removed him from the vice president role and reassigned him to regional sales manager with a salary reduction to $85,000 per year. Michael, you'll need to earn any future promotions through merit and results instead of expecting advancement. Because you're my son, I explained. The entitlement was being replaced with accountability. Most importantly, Michael started showing genuine appreciation for the opportunities I had provided throughout his entire adult life. Dad, thank you for giving me a chance to work at the company you built. Became a regular expression of gratitude. I realize now how much I took for granted while assuming I deserved everything just because I was born into this family. These were the kinds of appreciative comments that had been missing from our relationship for years. My business continued thriving without the stress of managing an entitled heir who didn't share the company's core values. Mitchell Manufacturing completed our biggest year ever, with $48 million in revenue and record profits. We hired 23 new employees and expanded into 2 additional states. Every success reminded me that protecting company values from entitled leadership had been the right decision for our organization. I also started a new romantic relationship with a wonderful woman named Carol who works as a nurse at the local hospital. "Thomas, you seem more peaceful and confident lately," she observed during our first dinner date. "Making that difficult decision about Michael was good for your emotional well-being." She was right that protecting my dignity had improved my overall happiness and openness to new experiences. The charitable foundation I established with Michael's former inheritance has already made a significant impact on working families in our community. The Thomas and Sarah Mitchell Foundation provides scholarships for children of manufacturing workers and supports programs that help blue-collar families buy their first homes. $44 million helping people who share the values that built our success, I announced at the foundation's dedication ceremony. Michael was present at the foundation announcement and publicly supported my decision to give away the fortune he had lost. "My father is doing exactly the right thing with his wealth," he told the local newspaper. "I learned that money means nothing without respect and appreciation for the people who make success possible." His statement showed genuine growth in understanding what really matters in relationships. Looking back on this entire experience, I learned crucial lessons about family relationships and personal boundaries that every person should understand. First, financial generosity toward family members doesn't create obligations to tolerate disrespectful treatment or cruel behavior. Michael's inheritance was a gift based on love, not an entitlement that protected him from consequences when he showed his true character. Second, sometimes permanent consequences are necessary to create real change in people's attitudes toward family and respect. Michael's apologies would never have led to genuine appreciation if he knew the inheritance was still available. Only by losing everything did he learn to value relationships over social status and material expectations. Most importantly, I learned that standing up for your dignity and values protects not just yourself, but sets important examples for how family members should treat each other. At 72 years old, I finally have the respect and appreciation I always deserved, but had been afraid to demand from ungrateful family members. Today, Michael treats me like a valued father instead of an embarrassing social liability to be managed. Our conversations focus on genuine connection rather than his comfort or Ashley's social ambitions. He learned that family respect must be earned through consistent kindness and appreciation, not assumed because of blood relationships or inherited wealth. The son who was embarrassed by his father discovered that embarrassment works both ways in family relationships. If you are still here and enjoyed this story, please like this video. It really helps me know you want more content like this. If this story gave you some value or made you think, please share it with your friends or someone who needs to hear this message. If you have any questions or suggestions about this story, please type them in the comments below. I love reading what you think. If you want more stories like this one, please subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories coming. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by setting boundaries and demanding the respect you deserve.